Welcome to the Anxiety Slayer podcast. I'm Shan Vanderleek here with my good friend and co-host Ananga Sivir. We've been creating podcasts for you since 2009. Before we begin today, we'd like to give a shout out to our new patrons, Rachel, Terry, Tina, and Sherry. Thank you for supporting our work on Patreon. Become an Anxiety Slayer patron and unlock a community of support, guidance, and inner calm, plus more than 200 downloads. You can join today at patreon.com/anxietyslayer. Welcome back to another week, Ananga.
Hey, Shan.
It's good to be with you and always good to address a listener question. This week, we're going to be talking about panic attacks and how you can support yourself when anxiety and panic feel like they come out of nowhere. And the question that was submitted was, sometimes I'll feel like my heart is flipping over with palpitations and then I'm off to the races with a panic attack. I've been checked out and my heart is fine. There seems to be a mental recall aspect to this. If I'm in the same situation, if the weather is the same, post-exercise seems to be a trigger also. I've been able to reduce the frequency of these things, but every so often I'm hit out of the blue. Do you have any suggestions? And what a great question. And she brings up so many of the things that we hear about and that we know come with anxiety attacks.
I'm sure many of our listeners will be able to relate to this question, this feeling triggered after exercise, physical activity, different situations that can bring anxious feelings up, and that awful feeling that anxiety can come at us out of the blue. It's something we have talked about before, but I think it's good to go over it again because new listeners will have joined us since we last discussed it. And I think it's good to be reminded of how this can happen and what helps.
And to have a better understanding of how the mind can get easily triggered.
Yeah.
Once we've experienced anxiety in a particular place, situation, or even climate, the mind can flag it as an experience to be wary of. And how intensely we feel that can vary from mild unease to full-blown anxiety. And that makes me think of an example of this where a few years back, we were moving from winter to spring. I was heading to a big box grocery store, and I got inside of this place, and it was all too much. The sounds, the lighting, all of the people moving around really, really made me feel uncomfortable. And I got out of there as soon as I could, called you, did some tapping, worked through it. But what I noticed was the next time I went there, I really needed to prepare myself and kind of zip up my energy and look after myself. And after a few more visits, I decided that I just didn't want to shop there anymore. And now I go to a smaller, more local grocery, which is nice and easy in and out and less of all of the things that I found triggering in the other place.
That's a really good example. And I think it's important for us to be aware of choice versus avoidance. Sometimes we do have an option that is just a more comfortable experience and we're going to choose that. And sometimes we feel hypervigilant and we start stepping back and our boundaries kind of shrink in of what we can handle because we feel avoidant of places where we've had uncomfortable experiences before. So that's where it's really helpful to be able to ask ourselves questions and to be able to do some tapping, bring the anxiety down, talk to somebody, and then just see, okay, I know what I need to do to go through this situation more comfortably next time, or I choose to not go through the same situation and to choose an alternative. We talk about this in detail in our free Anxiety Slayer starter course, which you can find on our anxietyslayeracademy.com website. It's really worth getting that course because we talk about this and give some examples. There's some other teachings too about the fear of anxiety, how when we have a really intense experience with anxiety, we start to dread that coming up again naturally. And there's some tapping and other information, some guided practices in the course. But the story we share there is of somebody very similar to what you just shared, Shan, somebody who was in a big shopping center and they were heading towards the food court to get some lunch, and they started to feel dizzy and faint and unwell. And they were able to sit down, and somebody bought them a glass of water, and they were fine. But the next time they went back to that same place a few weeks later, as they walked around the corner to enter the food court, the exact spot where they'd felt unwell before, they started to feel very anxious. And they stopped, and they didn't want to go any further. Their body was just bringing up this strong aversion to getting any closer. But fortunately, she could remember what had happened when she was there before and stop and question her feelings and reassure herself that she was fine to continue this time. And she was able to go and do what she needed to do. But sometimes we're not aware. We just have that anxious feeling come up, and we might have forgotten the previous experience. And that's one of the scenarios where we can feel like anxieties come at us out of the blue. And that's a very scary feeling.
And that's why it really helps to question your mind, question your anxiety, to see where it's coming from. And once we can identify that, if we can identify that, then you know how to support yourself.
Yeah.
Revisiting that prior example that I gave, I realize now that I just do better in smaller retail spaces. So I went back. Since then, that store has been completely renovated and everything has changed and moved into new spaces. And I thought, okay, am I even going to go back and check that out? And I don't know if I will or if I won't, because now I found a space that is more comfortable for me. I think I could do it, and I think I could prepare myself to do it, and I would be fine. Because, again, I'm questioning what happened. And I went back, like I said, multiple times, and I was fine. I just realized I don't like that experience. I don't like those ceilings to the sky and hundreds of people in the aisles and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just not my thing.
Me neither. I prefer smaller. It can be really overwhelming. And again, that's the choice where we realize, okay, I do have options.
And then there was the mention of why we can get anxiety after we exercise. I don't think we've ever really addressed this, so I'm glad we get to talk about it. What is that all about?
It can feel similar to anxiety when our heart rate's elevated. So the mind can flag it as potential anxiety symptoms. It can build up a bit with anxiety without us realizing what's happening. So we might be exercising happily, and then we become exerted and our heart rate and our breathing increase because that's how the body works. But the mind might flag that and think that feels the same as an anxiety attack, which also makes our heart go faster. So it gets flagged. Our mind can link it to a past anxiety episode, and then our nervous system gets involved and the feelings increase.
And this is where it's incredibly important to be sweet with yourself and use supportive self-talk. And maybe frame it like, even though I'm starting to feel a little bit anxious, I love and accept myself, and I understand that I'm exercising right now. Body, I'm okay. I'm exercising right now. That means my heart rate is going to increase. That means I am going to breathe a little heavier, and it's all good. I'm working out. I'm taking care of myself. I'm taking care of my body. You find your own words, but it's really helpful to do that. Sometimes that will nip anything in the bud when you start to feel anxious. If that doesn't work, then you can use the calming point on the center of your hand. You can try the long exhale breathing practice. You can splash cold water on your face, or you can tap. There's many choices that you have as soon as you start feeling twitchy right after working out and you're questioning, what is this?
Yeah, anything to help you normalize it. It might feel similar to anxiety, but it isn't. And also when we can become aware of cause and effect. I always find it helpful when we know, well, I just walked up a steep hill or something, or I'm at the gym, or I've done this. It's like, okay, this is natural. This is the body gearing up in response to increased physical activity. This is normal. Anything we can do to help that feel normal. While we just wait a few moments and let our heart rate settle, when the mind and the nervous system get involved, it can hold it at an elevated rate or increase it further. So anything we can do to help that not happen and have things just come back down, settle back down, is helpful. So I thought it might be good if we could once again mention the calming point and exactly how you do it, because that has a direct effect on calming the rate of our heart. It's a very soothing practice.
The calming point is found right in the center of the palm of your hand. Ayurvedic teacher Dr. Vasant Lad has introduced this vital energy point many years ago as a valuable aid in reducing anxiety. We've talked about it hundreds of times and will continue to do so because it is so very helpful. Basically, to find the point, make a fist with your left hand and look for where your middle finger touches your palm. Should be almost right in the center of your palm. Now press that point with the thumb of your right hand firmly for about a minute while you take deep, steady breaths. You want to make sure that you relax your jaw, that you let your shoulders drop, and relax as much as you can as you hold that point while you keep taking slow, deep breaths. And you should notice within the minute, within the first 3 to 4 breaths, that you start to find some calming. You start to find more at ease. It's such a beautiful way to calm yourself quickly and easily, and nobody has any idea what you're doing.
Yeah,
So you can really take care of yourself right now.
really discreet practice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime there's that trigger after exercise, this is a very good way to calm the heart. It has a direct impact on the heart. And I think when we have things we know we can do and things that are so easy to remember, that in and of itself can reduce the intensity of anxiety because we don't feel like a sitting duck. We've got something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that's really helpful is the quick anxiety stopper, which is a sequence of 3 acupressure points, vital points that you can tap with your fingertips to reduce high anxiety states. And these 3 points come out of the collection of points that form the EFT tapping sequence, but they're 3 points that are particularly good for calming anxiety. So, with EFT tapping, you usually use some words to set yourself up and focus in. And sometimes for people, that can be a little bit of a hurdle. When anxiety's heightened, they might think, oh, I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to say. And then they don't do it. So, no words with the quick anxiety stopper is just 3 points. And it's very effective for calming anxiety attacks where your heart's racing, your thoughts are racing. It's good for calming anxiety once it's already peaked and bringing it down. And it's good for preventing anxiety from escalating. So, very simply, the first point is under your eye, dead in the center under your eye. You can find these points at anxietyslayer.com/EFT. That's the whole tapping sequence, but we'll just give you 3 points here to pick out on the diagram you can find there. So the first point is right in the center under your eye. Just tap there with your fingertips, either side, either hand, really easy. Next point is under your arm, about 4 inches down from the armpit, just to lean across your body and pat firmly there. This point is really good if you're feeling lightheaded. You feel like you might pass out. This is a very grounding point that can prevent that feeling from escalating. And the next point is by the collarbone, our favorite point for anxiety. That point alone can calm anxiety. So just tapping there under the collarbone, next to the breastbone, tapping there with your fingertips, taking steady breaths. And we also have SOS guided tapping sessions on our Patreon where you can follow along with us. And once you've listened a couple of times, you know what to do. You can remember. So they're good ways of working to bring intense anxiety down.
Tapping is magic. It's pure magic. If you practice tapping, if you learn EFT tapping, you are going to improve your levels of anxiety so much faster than you can imagine. Please allow yourself to play with it, practice. I know it's a little bit strange, and sometimes I will forget how important it is, and then I'll start tapping. And it's funny that you brought up the collarbone because that's where I will naturally go to. If I'm feeling out of sorts, I just go right there. And it's incredibly helpful. You can use tapping in any situation where you're aware of your triggers. Anytime that you're maybe anxious in a crowd or in the grocery store or just after exercise or whatever's coming up, just tap.
It's surprisingly effective. I'm still surprised after using it for over 20 years, well over 20 years now. I'm still sometimes surprised how effective it is. And there are so many different ways you can use it, but it doesn't have to be complex. You can find examples in our free Anxiety Slayer starter course, where you can get used to it. You can find the chart and some introductory information at anxietyslayer.com/EFT. We've got guided tapping sessions on our Patreon, patreon.com/anxietyslayer. It's very easy to learn and get used to, and you can apply it in a whole host of situations. But even to keep it really simple in a situation where you feel triggered, when you're in that situation, just start tapping. You can start tapping the collarbone, taking steady breaths, or the 3 points I've just mentioned. You know, if you feel like you're in a crowd, you're starting to feel overwhelmed, you're somewhere where you're overwhelmed by noise, use those points just to give yourself some calm and a break, you know, a pause where you decide what you want to do next to get more comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ananga. Thanks for listening to Anxiety Slayer. We're so grateful that you come back week after week. And we hope you join us again next week, where we're going to be walking you through a guided EFT tapping session, a brand new one that will help you when you're triggered, that will help you when you feel a panic or an anxiety attack coming on. So be sure to listen in for that. And if you love our podcast, please consider exploring our Patreon for loads of Anxiety Slayer extras for calming anxiety, including exclusive posts, guided meditations, tapping sessions, popular episodes from our archives, and behind the scenes conversations. Learn more at patreon.com/anxietyslayer.